So last year, at this time, we were not in the building. For many, it felt like Easter was canceled, along with many other parts of our normal lives. But when we are not in the building, our faith is not canceled. In fact, leaving the tombs that bind us is when our faith is able to be most realized. So we have a lot of questions since last year. Have we realized our faith in this last year in new and profound ways? Will we continue our faith in these new ways? Or maybe we need to realize we need to begin. Have we even exited the tomb? Or have we just been waiting to re-enter? Have we been the witnesses, as the disciples were, who know the story and are called to share it with the world every day? Are we still wandering around waiting to figure out what happened? Have we allowed Jesus to truly be seen this past year, or is Easter something that only happens on Sunday morning? I went back to look at last year's Easter sermon because even now I know, strangely enough, that last year's was more of an actual Easter experience than this one. Because Easter really isn't about wearing our best outfits and hats to church. It's not about those Easter lilies or all the pomp and circumstance. In fact, a year ago, Reverend Allison Lanza stated it quite beautifully. The very first Easter was not in a crowded worship space with singing and praising. On the very first Easter, the disciples were locked in their house. It was dangerous for them to come out. They were afraid. They wanted to believe the good news they had heard from the women that Jesus had risen, but it seemed too good to be true. They were living in such time of such despair and such fear. If they left their homes, their lives and the lives of their loved ones might be at risk. Could a miracle really have happened? Could life really have won out over death? As I reflect on Allison's words, I continue to ask more questions. Did life win out this year? Will life win out? Will love be able to overcome fear? What story of Jesus over the last year have we witnessed and been witnesses? As people who testify that Jesus is the judge of our lives, then are we sharing, finding, and living out that knowledge of a resurrected Christ and the good news of his love? Are we finding ways to be prophets of that peace? I ask these difficult questions because last year's sermon reminded me that fear and joy together are what make love an Easter experience. Because fear and joy are both sides of this life and love experience. Fear and joy are both sides of the experience of resurrection. And as I thought about fear and joy, there are some answers to these questions that I have to admit bring me great fear about the world we are experiencing. But there are also some answers to these questions that bring me great joy of how the legacy of Christ still finds ways and continues to save the lost, empower the voiceless, and enable our own divinity to be God-ish. Well, last week we reminded ourselves that we are human. This week we remind ourselves that while we are not Christ, we are still created with the breath of God within us. And just as Peter and the disciples continued the work of Jesus, we continue his work. We continue his story. We continue the resurrection. We continue to be God's love in the human world. And if truly Easter is able to happen, we are the ones who must continue its reality outside of these walls. Today's children's book for Easter, for those who do not hear it, is I Am Love by Susan Burde and illustrated by Peter H. Reynolds. And it asks this question. I ask myself, what can I do to help let the light back in? What can we do to roll away the stones that let the light back in and let fear leave? Well, we must celebrate and engage and live out that Easter outside of these walls, and we must not only believe in the good news, but share it. That there is someone who loves us so much in our stormiest of moments, that he fought to show us that life can continue in the face of fear because of that great love. So we must be loved. Just as we are human, we are loved. I am loved. You are loved. Say it with me. We are loved. And we are loved because we know that Jesus is love. Love in its most sacred, holy, and divine way. Love as justice, mercy, grace, and peace. Love as compassion for other. Love as compassion for what makes us be okay when we ourselves feel like the other. Love that testifies actively that fear shall not win in the end. Death does not win. Cruelty does not win. Romans do not win. Betrayers do not win. Love wins. But we know that it's hard work. It is hard work to push away the stones that entrap us. It is hard to let the light back in when it seems like the storm may never stop. It is hard work to truly be willing and vulnerable and engaged, to be a witness to something that so often we must admit that the world doesn't really want to see. So it is hard work to allow Jesus to be seen, to let God be seen, to let ourselves be seen as God's, and thus let love be seen. But we are loved in the middle of dangerous times. We are loved in the middle of even grieving and difficult times. We are loved in the middle of transformative and changing times. We are loved, and we know it because of Jesus, and that is the power of Easter, not just on a Sunday morning, but every day as a Christian. Every day we know the light. We must share that light, and we continue difficult, the stones that are trying to hinder the light. We walk with the light. We are part, as the book says, of God's stardust that created this world. The stardust that touches us created Jesus. We are part of that stardust and Holy Spirit and energy that brought Jesus back to life. And we are part of the stardust of God's great love, great connectedness. We are love. We are connected. We are created. We are prophetic. We are resurrected indeed.